Welcome to this peaceful journey through the world of seeds. Let yourself relax as we explore the quiet science behind the plants that feed our world. There's no need to remember everything. Just let the information wash over you like gentle waves. Let's begin with something simple, something small enough to hold in your hand. A seed. But what is a seed, really? When you look at a tiny seed, you might think it's just the beginning of a plant, a simple starting point. But it's so much more than that. A seed is a time capsule. It's a carefully packaged collection of genetic information, a record of history, and a promise of what could be. Inside that small shell is everything a plant needs to know about itself. Instructions written in DNA that have been refined over countless generations. Think of it as nature's way of storing a blueprint, a recipe, and a photograph all in one tiny vessel. Each seed carries a memory of its ancestors, the traits that helped them survive, the characteristics that made them unique. And locked within that potential is also yield, the capacity to produce food, flowers, or the next generation of seeds. It's remarkable when you think about it, how something so small can contain so much information, so much possibility. Now, among all the seeds in the world, there's a special category that connects us directly to our agricultural past. These are called heirloom seeds. The word heirloom itself suggests something precious, something passed down through families, and that's exactly what these seeds are. Heirloom seeds come from open pollinated varieties, meaning they're pollinated naturally by insects, birds, wind, or other natural mechanisms. These varieties have been saved and replanted for generations, sometimes for 50 years, sometimes for hundreds of years. They're often tied to specific cultures, specific regions, specific families who cared enough to save them year after year. Imagine a grandmother in a small village, carefully selecting the best tomatoes from her garden, setting them aside, collecting their seeds, drying them, and then next spring, planting those same seeds again. Then imagine her daughter doing the same thing, and her daughter after that. That's how heirloom varieties survive, through this quiet, patient chain of human care and intention. Many heirloom seeds carry stories with them. They might be named after the families who kept them alive, or the places where they thrived. They're living links to the past, to different ways of farming, different ways of eating, different relationships with the land. You might wonder why heirloom seeds matter in our modern world of industrial agriculture and global food systems. The answer lies in something called genetic diversity. Think of it this way. If all the plants we grow are very similar to each other, they'll all have similar strengths but also similar weaknesses. If a new disease comes along, or the climate shifts, those uniform plants might all struggle in the same way. But heirloom varieties, because they're developed in different places under different conditions over long periods of time, offer us incredible diversity. They contain traits we might not even know we need yet. Some heirloom tomatoes can tolerate drought better than modern varieties. Some old varieties of corn have deeper root systems that help prevent soil erosion. Some heritage grains have nutritional profiles that have been lost in modern breeding. And then there's flavor. Many people who taste heirloom vegetables for the first time are struck by how different they taste, often more intense, more complex, more interesting than what they're used to. This diversity isn't just nice to have, it's essential. It's our insurance policy against future challenges. Scientists and breeders often turn to heirloom varieties when they need to introduce specific traits into modern crops. That ancient variety that's been growing in a mountain valley for centuries might hold the key to helping our food crops survive future climate conditions. But if heirloom seeds are so valuable, why don't farmers use them more? This brings us to the practical limitations of heirloom varieties. The same qualities that make heirlooms special can also make them challenging for commercial farming. First, there's the issue of yield. Heirloom plants often produce less food per plant or per acre than modern varieties that have been specifically bred for high production. For a farmer trying to make a living, that difference in yield can be significant. Then there's uniformity, or rather, the lack of it. When you plant heirloom seeds, you might get plants of different heights, fruits of different sizes, vegetables that ripen at different times. For a home gardener, that might be fine, even charming. But for a farmer who needs to harvest with machinery, or who needs to pack produce into standardized boxes, or with buyers expecting consistent size and appearance, that variation becomes a problem. There's also the matter of pest and disease resistance. Some heirloom varieties are quite tough, survivors that have proven themselves over generations, but others, particularly ones that were developed in a time and place with different pest pressures, can be vulnerable to modern agricultural diseases and insects. A variety that thrived in a small garden 100 years ago might struggle when planted in a field-scale operation where diseases can spread more easily. These aren't reasons to abandon heirlooms, but they help explain why farmers often choose other options for commercial production. The story of how we got from ancient farming to modern agriculture is in many ways a story of plant breeding, and it's a much older story than most people realize. The birth of plant breeding as a human practice goes back more than 10,000 years. Think about that for a moment. 10,000 years ago, long before written language, before cities, before most of what we think of as civilization, humans were already practicing a form of plant breeding. They were observing their crops and making choices. After the harvest, they would look at their plants and select seeds from the ones that performed best. Maybe one wheat plant had larger seeds, so they'd save those. Maybe one squash plant was more resistant to the local pests, so they'd keep those seeds for next year. Season after season, generation after generation, this selection process gradually changed plants. Wild grasses became cultivated grains. Bitter roots became nutritious vegetables. Small, seedy fruits became the larger, sweeter versions we know today. This wasn't science in the modern sense. There were no laboratories, no genetics textbooks, no understanding of DNA. But it was selection, careful observation, and intentional choice. And over thousands of years, it transformed agriculture and human civilization along with it. Every culture that practiced agriculture developed their own varieties suited to their climate, their soil, their needs. This patient, observational approach to plant breeding continued for most of human history, passed down as traditional knowledge from one generation to the next. Now, let's move forward in time to a more recent innovation. In the world of modern agriculture, you've probably heard the term hybrid seeds. But what actually are hybrid seeds? A hybrid is created through a very intentional process. Plant breeders take two different parent plants, each chosen because they have specific desirable traits, and they cross-pollinate them in a controlled way. The seeds produced from this cross are the hybrid seeds. The key here is control and intention. The breeder isn't just letting nature take its course. They're specifically choosing which plants to cross and carefully managing the pollination to ensure the cross happens as planned. Let's say one variety of corn is very resistant to drought but doesn't produce much grain, and another variety produces abundant grain but needs a lot of water. A breeder might cross these two varieties, hoping that some of the offspring will inherit drought resistance from one parent and high grain production from the other. When they find a hybrid combination that works well, one that successfully combines the traits they want, they can reproduce that exact cross each year to create more of those hybrid seeds. This is different from simply saving seeds from a good plant. The hybrid is a result of a specific, repeatable cross between two particular parent lines. This is a good moment to clear up a very common confusion. Hybrid seeds are not the same as GMO seeds, and this distinction is important. When people hear about hybrid seeds and how they're created in controlled breeding programs, they sometimes assume this must involve genetic modification. But it doesn't. Hybridization is fundamentally a natural process. It's just crossbreeding, something that happens in nature all the time. What humans do is guide this process, choose which plants cross with which. But the actual mechanism is the same as natural pollination. A bee could theoretically create the same cross, though it would be random rather than intentional. GMO, or genetically modified organisms, involve a completely different process. That's when scientists work in a laboratory to directly alter an organism's DNA, sometimes even inserting genes from completely different species. For example, they might insert a gene from a bacteria into a corn plant to make it resistant to certain insects. That kind of direct genetic engineering is not possible through traditional breeding or hybridization. You can't crossbreed a corn plant with a bacteria. So when you're growing hybrid seeds, you're working with plants that could have been created through natural pollination, just with human guidance to make it happen reliably and predictably. Understanding this difference helps us have clearer conversations about modern agriculture and the different tools farmers use. So if hybrid seeds are just controlled crossbreeding, not genetic modification, why do they become so dominant in modern farming? The answer lies in their performance. Hybrid seeds offered farmers several compelling advantages. First and most obviously, higher yields. When breeders successfully combine parent lines, the resulting hybrid plants often produce significantly more food per acre than open pollinated varieties. For a farmer, especially one working on thin profit margins, that increased yield can make the difference between financial success and failure. But it's not just about quantity. Hybrids also offer uniformity. When you plant a field of hybrid seeds, the plants tend to grow to similar heights, mature at similar times, and produce fruits or vegetables of similar sizes. This uniformity makes every part of farming easier. Planting can be optimized. Irrigation can be standardized. Harvesting can be done all at once, often with machinery. Packing and shipping become more efficient when the produce is consistent. There's also the benefit of predictable harvest times. A farmer can plan their labor, their equipment, their contracts with buyers, all based on knowing when the crop will be ready. And then there's disease resistance. Many hybrid varieties have been specifically bred to resist common crop diseases, reducing the need for chemical treatments and reducing crop losses. All of these factors together meant that as hybrid seeds became available through the 20th century, more and more farmers adopted them. The economic and practical advantages were simply too significant to ignore for commercial agriculture. But why do hybrid plants perform so well? What's happening at a biological level that makes them so vigorous? This brings us to a fascinating phenomenon called hybrid vigor, or in scientific terms, heterosis. When you cross two different but related parent plants, the offspring sometimes show enhanced characteristics compared to either parent. They might grow faster, develop stronger, resist stress better, produce more abundantly. It's as if the combination unlocks something more than the sum of its parts. The science behind this is complex and not fully understood even now, but part of it relates to genetic diversity at the individual plant level. Each parent contributes its set of genes, and in a hybrid, having two different versions of various genes can sometimes create a more robust organism. Think of it like having backup systems. If one gene version has a slight weakness, the other version might compensate for it. Or sometimes the interaction between different gene versions creates unexpected benefits. You can see heterosis not just in plants, but in animals too. It's been observed in corn, in rice, in pigs, and chickens, across many agricultural species. The effect is often most pronounced in the first generation, the direct offspring of the parent cross. This first-generation hybrid, called the F1 generation, shows the maximum hybrid vigor. And this is where commercial hybrid seeds come from that powerful first-generation cross. This brings us to an important trade-off that farmers and gardeners need to understand about hybrid seeds. Unlike heirloom seeds, hybrid seeds don't reliably reproduce their traits in the next generation. Remember that hybrid vigor we just talked about? It's strongest in that first generation, the F1. If you save seeds from a hybrid plant and plant them the next year, you're growing what's called the F2 generation, the grandchildren of the original parent lines. And here's what happens. The traits start to separate and recombine in unpredictable ways. Some plants might resemble one grandparent. Some might resemble the other. Some might be somewhere in between. You lose that uniformity, that predictable performance, that hybrid vigor. The plants might still grow, they might produce food, but they won't perform like their hybrid parent did. This means that farmers who use hybrid seeds typically need to purchase new seeds each year rather than saving seed from their harvest. For seed companies, this creates a business model where farmers are return customers every season. For farmers, it's an ongoing expense. But many farmers accept this trade-off because the performance advantages of the fresh hybrid seeds outweigh the cost of purchasing them annually. For home gardeners who like to save seeds, this characteristic of hybrids can be disappointing. You can't maintain a hybrid variety through seed saving the way you can with an heirloom. If you want to keep growing that specific hybrid, you need to keep buying those seeds. This doesn't make hybrids bad. It's just a characteristic to understand. It's part of the fundamental difference between hybrid seeds and open pollinated varieties. One is designed for maximum first-generation performance. The other is designed for long-term, stable reproduction. As you relax and let these ideas settle, consider the journey we've taken, from the simple question of what a seed is, through the history preserved in heirloom varieties, to the science behind modern hybrids. Each approach, each type of seed, has its place, its strengths, its story. The quiet work of seed saving, the patient observation of traditional breeding, the scientific precision of hybrid development, all are part of how humans have worked with plants to feed ourselves, to adapt to challenges, to innovate while preserving what matters. Let these thoughts drift through your mind as you rest. The world of seeds is vast, patient, and endlessly fascinating. Sleep well. Let yourself settle in as we continue our gentle exploration of seeds and how they shape our world. There's no pressure to remember every detail. Just let the information flow over you like a quiet stream. As agriculture evolved and hybrid seeds became more sophisticated, something else changed too: the business of seeds themselves. In the modern world, seed companies and intellectual property have become deeply intertwined with how we grow food. When a seed company spends years, sometimes decades, developing a new hybrid variety, testing different parent lines, selecting for specific traits, they've made a substantial investment. And like other innovations, these new varieties can be protected through patents and licensing agreements. A patent on a seed variety gives a company legal control over how that variety is used. Farmers who want to grow patented seeds typically need to sign licensing agreements, contracts that specify how the seeds can be used and what the farmer can and cannot do with them. This has created a global seed industry dominated by large corporations, companies with the resources to invest in long-term breeding programs, to conduct extensive field trials, to navigate complex regulatory systems. These companies operate across borders, developing varieties for different climates and markets around the world. The intellectual property systems vary by country, but the general trend has been toward more formal legal protection for seed innovations. Some people see this as necessary to incentivize innovation, to reward the years of work that go into developing better varieties. Others worry about the consolidation of power over something as fundamental as seeds, about what it means when a handful of corporations control such a large portion of the global seed supply. Both perspectives hold some truth. The system has produced remarkable agricultural advances, crops that can feed more people with fewer resources. But it has also created new dependencies and shifted power dynamics in ways that affect farmers worldwide. This brings us to one of the most significant impacts of the modern seed system: how it affects small-scale farmers around the world. For thousands of years, farmers operated with a fundamental form of independence. They saved seeds from their harvest, selected the best, and planted them the next season. This created a self-sustaining cycle. A farmer might purchase or trade for new seed occasionally to introduce fresh genetics, but fundamentally, they could grow food year after year from their own saved seed. With the shift to hybrid and patented varieties, that cycle has changed. Farmers who want to use high-performing modern varieties often need to purchase new seed every year. For some farmers, particularly those in wealthy countries with access to credit and stable markets, this is a manageable business expense. The increased yield from hybrid seeds more than pay for the cost of purchasing them annually. But for small-scale farmers in developing regions, farmers working on thin margins with limited cash flow, the requirement to purchase seed every season can be a significant burden. It shifts the economics of farming and creates a dependency on the cash economy and on seed companies. If a farmer has a bad year, if they can't afford to buy seed for the next season, they're in trouble in a way their grandparents might not have been. There's also the issue of choice and control. When farmers save their own seed, they can select for traits that matter to them: flavor, adaptability to their specific field conditions, cultural preferences. When they purchase seed, they're limited to whatever varieties the companies have chosen to develop and market. This doesn't mean purchased seeds are bad. Many farmers choose them willingly for their performance. But it does represent a shift in autonomy and risk. Some organizations and movements work to preserve farmer seed systems, to maintain seed libraries and exchange networks, to keep alive the practice of seed saving, particularly for open-pollinated and heirloom varieties. They see this as important both for genetic diversity and for farmer independence. Now, let's consider a more tangible difference between heirloom and hybrid varieties, one you can actually taste. There's an ongoing debate in food circles about flavor versus shelf life, and it captures something essential about the different goals of different seed types. Many people who grow or buy heirloom tomatoes, for instance, are struck by their intense flavor, their complexity, the way they taste distinctly different from standard supermarket tomatoes. This isn't just nostalgia or imagination. Heirloom varieties were often selected over generations for flavor because the people saving those seeds were eating them. Taste mattered. But modern hybrid varieties, especially those used in commercial agriculture, have often been bred with other priorities in mind. They need to ripen uniformly, so the whole field can be harvested at once. They need to have thick skins that won't bruise during mechanical harvesting. They need to stay firm during transport from farm to distribution center to store. They need to have a long shelf life, so they can sit in the store for days without going soft. Each of these traits is valuable for the modern food system, but they sometimes come at the expense of flavor. The thick skin that protects during shipping might make the tomato less pleasant to eat. The uniform ripening might mean harvesting before full flavor development. The long shelf life might correlate with lower sugar content. So yes, heirlooms often win on taste, while hybrids excel in transport and storage. But it's not quite so simple as hybrids bad, heirlooms good. Some modern breeders are working to develop hybrids that maintain better flavor while still having commercial viability. And some heirloom varieties were never particularly delicious in the first place. They were bred for other characteristics entirely, like reliability or storage in a time before refrigeration. The debate really highlights different values and different needs. A chef at a farm-to-table restaurant can prioritize an incredibly flavorful but delicate heirloom because it only needs to travel a few miles. A farmer growing for a regional distribution system needs something that can handle the journey. Both approaches feed people, just in different contexts. As we think about the future of agriculture and seeds, we can't ignore one of the most pressing challenges facing our world: climate change. And this is where seed innovation becomes not just interesting, but critical. The climate that farmers have relied on, the rainfall patterns, the temperature ranges, the length of growing seasons, these are all shifting. In some regions, it's happening gradually. In others, the changes are dramatic. Droughts are becoming more common or more severe in many agricultural areas. Heat waves during critical growing periods can devastate crops that were bred for cooler conditions. In coastal agricultural regions, rising sea levels are bringing saltwater intrusion into fields that were once fresh. These aren't hypothetical future problems. They're happening now, and farmers need seeds that can handle these new realities. This is driving a whole new focus in plant breeding. Scientists and breeders are working to develop varieties with drought tolerance, able to produce decent yields even when water is scarce. They're selecting for heat resistance, finding the genetic variations that let plants survive and still produce food during extreme temperature events. They're breeding for salinity tolerance, developing varieties that can grow in slightly salty soil without dying or dramatically reducing yield. Some of this work involves looking back at traditional varieties, those heirloom and lander's varieties that farmers developed in challenging environments. A variety that's been grown in a semi-arid region for centuries might have drought tolerance traits that can be bred into modern varieties. A traditional variety from a coastal area might have some salt tolerance. This is where the genetic diversity we talked about earlier becomes so valuable. The traits we need for future resilience might already exist somewhere in the vast collection of traditional varieties that farmers and seed savers have maintained. But the work is also leveraging modern science, understanding the genetics behind stress tolerance, using new breeding techniques to accelerate the development of climate-adaptive varieties. This is genuinely crucial work. Our ability to feed ourselves in a changing climate depends in part on having seeds that can handle the conditions we're facing. Even as we work on adapting to climate change, we can't lose sight of a fundamental challenge that hybrid crops have helped address: food security for a growing global population. The world's population has grown dramatically over the last century, and with the demand for food. At the same time, the amount of farmland hasn't increased proportionally. In some regions, it's actually decreased due to urbanization and land degradation. So we've needed to produce more food from the same or less land. This is where the high yields of hybrid crops have been genuinely important. When a hybrid variety produces significantly more grain per acre than traditional varieties, that means more people can be fed from the same field. It means farmers can make a living on smaller plots. It means less pressure to convert forests or grasslands into farmland. The green revolution of the mid-20th century, which relied heavily on new high-yielding hybrid varieties, is estimated to have saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. That's not an exaggeration. It's a genuine achievement of plant breeding. Now, the green revolution also had costs and complications. It required inputs like fertilizers and water that not everyone could afford. It sometimes displaced traditional varieties and farming methods. It had environmental impacts. These are real concerns worth discussing. But the fundamental role of hybrid crops in feeding growing populations shouldn't be dismissed. As we look ahead to a world that might have 9 or 10 billion people by mid-century, the challenge of food security remains. We need crops that produce abundantly with limited resources, limited water, limited fertilizer, limited land. Hybrid breeding continues to be one of the tools, not the only tool but an important one, for meeting that challenge. It's part of a larger puzzle that includes reducing food waste, changing dietary patterns, improving distribution systems, addressing poverty and access. But at the heart of it, we need seeds that can help us grow enough food for everyone. Given the importance of genetic diversity and the value of traditional varieties we've discussed, there's a global effort underway to preserve these genetics for the future. This is the work of seed banks, facilities dedicated to collecting, storing, and safeguarding seeds. The most famous is probably the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, a facility built into a mountain on a remote Norwegian island in the Arctic, designed to survive even catastrophic events and preserve seed samples from around the world. But there are seed banks on every continent, national seed banks, regional collections, specialized banks focusing on particular crops. The basic idea is straightforward. Collect seeds from as many varieties as possible, especially those that might be endangered or at risk of being lost. Store them carefully under controlled conditions where they'll remain viable for decades or even centuries. Catalog them meticulously so scientists and breeders can find what they need. These banks are like genetic libraries, preserving information in the form of DNA inside seeds. If a new disease threatens a major crop, breeders can search the seed bank collections for varieties that show resistance, then use those genetics to develop new resistant varieties. If climate change makes current varieties unsuitable for certain regions, breeders can look for varieties adapted to the conditions that region is moving toward. Seed banks also preserve cultural heritage, varieties developed by indigenous communities and traditional farmers, seeds with stories and history attached. The work of seed banking is painstaking and ongoing. Seeds don't stay viable forever, even under ideal storage conditions. So periodically they need to be grown out and fresh seeds collected to maintain the collection. It's a long-term commitment, a gift to future generations, an insurance policy against crop failures and lost diversity. In a world of rapid agricultural change, these quiet collections of carefully stored seeds might be among our most valuable resources. While seed banks preserve the past, other innovations are accelerating the development of new varieties for the future. Modern tools in seed development are changing what's possible in plant breeding. One major advance is marker-assisted breeding. This involves identifying specific DNA markers that are associated with desirable traits. Instead of having to grow a plant to maturity and see if it has the trait you want, breeders can test seedlings in a laboratory and see if they have the genetic markers for that trait. This dramatically speeds up the breeding process. You can select the plants with the desired genetics early and focus your resources on those, rather than growing out thousands of plants to maturity. There's also the use of sophisticated data analysis and modeling. Breeders now collect vast amounts of data from field trials, how varieties perform under different conditions, in different soils, with different weather patterns. Artificial intelligence and machine learning can analyze these huge data sets to find patterns and make predictions that will be impossible to spot through human observation alone. The AI might identify which parent combinations are most likely to produce desired traits, or predict how a variety will perform in a new environment based on its genetics and performance elsewhere. This doesn't replace traditional breeding knowledge and intuition, but augments it, providing new insights and speeding up decision-making. Some organizations are even using imaging technology and sensors to automatically monitor and measure plant traits during field trials, collecting more data more accurately than human observers could manage. These modern tools don't change the fundamental process of breeding. You're still selecting parent plants, making crosses, evaluating offspring, but they make the process faster and more precise. A breeding program that might have taken 15 years to develop a new variety might now do it in 8 or 10. In a world of rapid climate change and evolving challenges, that acceleration could be critically important. At the same time that modern hybrids dominate large-scale commercial agriculture, there's been a renaissance of interest in heirloom varieties in certain markets. Heirlooms have found economic viability in niche and premium markets where their unique characteristics are valued. Visit a high-end restaurant and you might see the menu listing specific heirloom tomato varieties by name: Brandywine, Cherokee Purple, Green Zebra. Chefs prize these varieties for their distinctive flavors and colors, the way they can make a dish special and memorable. Farmers' markets have become showcase venues for heirloom diversity. A market farmer can grow a dozen different types of tomatoes, in colors ranging from deep purple to striped green and yellow, and customers will pay premium prices for that variety and flavor. Small-scale specialty growers have built businesses around heirloom and rare variety production, serving customers who are willing to pay more for something unique. There's also a growing movement of seed savers and gardeners who grow heirlooms as a hobby or passion project. People who love the diversity, the history, the connection to traditional agriculture. They might not be growing for profit, but they're keeping varieties alive and maintaining the knowledge of how to grow them. Some commercial seed companies have responded to this interest by offering more heirloom varieties in their catalogs alongside their hybrids, recognizing there's a market for both. So while heirlooms might never again dominate broadacre agriculture the way they did a century ago, they found a secure and valued place in the modern food system. They serve markets that prioritize flavor, diversity, story, and heritage. They provide income for small farms. They preserve genetics that might be needed in the future. And they offer consumers choice, the ability to seek out foods that taste different and connect to agricultural traditions. Given all we've discussed, the different strengths and limitations of various seed types, you might wonder how farmers and growers actually make decisions about which seeds to use. The truth is, choosing the right seed for the right system depends on many factors. Each grower's situation is unique. Soil type matters. Some varieties do better in heavy clay soils, others in sandy soils, others in rich loam. The same seed variety might thrive in one field and struggle in another just a few miles away. Climate is obviously crucial. You need varieties suited to your growing season length, your temperature ranges, your rainfall patterns. A variety bred for Pacific Northwest might fail miserably in Arizona or Florida. Growing system makes a difference too. Seeds for traditional soil-based farming might not be the best choice for hydroponics or greenhouse production. There are varieties specifically bred for container growing, for vertical farms, for specific production systems. Market demand influences seed choice significantly. If you're growing for a processor who wants specific size and characteristics, you'll choose varieties that meet those specifications. If you're growing for a farmer's market where customers want diversity and flavor, you'll make different choices. Scale is another factor. A home gardener with a small backyard has different needs than a farmer working hundreds of acres. The gardener might choose interesting heirlooms that would never work commercially. The large-scale farmer needs varieties that can be harvested efficiently with equipment. And then there's the grower's own values and goals. Some prioritize organic production and choose varieties that work well without synthetic inputs. Some prioritize seed saving and avoid hybrids. Some prioritize maximum yield and profit. Some prioritize flavor above all. There's no universal right answer, no single best seed. The best seed is the one that matches your specific situation, your soil, your climate, your market, your system, your goals. This is why seed diversity is so valuable. Not just genetic diversity within varieties, but diversity of variety types. We need heirlooms, hybrids, traditional varieties, modern innovations, all serving different needs in different contexts. As we come to rest at the end of this section, let's think about where all of this is heading. The future of seeds isn't either or. It's not heirlooms or hybrids, traditional or modern, corporate or independent. The future is more likely to be a hybrid in its own right, a blending that combines the best of different approaches. We can see this already beginning to happen. Modern breeders are increasingly turning to heirloom and lander's varieties as sources of genetic diversity to incorporate into new varieties. Traditional genetics are being combined with modern breeding techniques to create varieties that have both the resilience and unique characteristics of heirlooms and the performance and uniformity of hybrids. Seed banking and genetic preservation work to ensure that the traditional diversity isn't lost even as agriculture continues to evolve. Small-scale seed companies and community seed libraries work to maintain farmer seed systems and independence while also participating in the modern seed economy. Some companies are exploring new business models, like open-source seed initiatives where improved varieties are shared freely rather than patented. Technology continues to advance, but increasingly there's awareness that it needs to serve diverse needs, not just industrial agriculture. The challenges ahead are real: feeding a growing population, adapting to climate change, maintaining biodiversity, ensuring farmer livelihoods, providing food security while also providing food quality and flavor. These challenges will require all the tools we have: ancient seed-saving traditions and cutting-edge genomics, heirlooms and innovations, community knowledge and scientific research. The seeds that will feed us in the decades to come will likely draw from a whole long history of human-plant breeding, honoring traditional wisdom while embracing new possibilities, maintaining diversity while improving performance, protecting farmer rights while encouraging innovation. In that future, there's room for many approaches, many types of seeds, many ways of growing food. And that diversity of approach, like the genetic diversity within the seeds themselves, might be our greatest strength as we navigate an uncertain future. Rest now with these thoughts of seeds and possibility, of ancient traditions and future innovations, of the quiet, ongoing work of keeping the world fed.